How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, today I'm going to give you 7 tips that will help you become a better leader. I'm going to give you some general advice, but that I'm also going to maybe tie into some specifics where I feel that tip could be applied, especially through my experience. The tips that I'm getting are coming from a book, which is a great book called The 360-Degree Leader. It's a great book. It's written by John Maxwell. Basically, it's about management in the middle, but this could really deal with anybody on a supervisory level who's looking to gain influence and lead. I mean, that's the key. And I'm going to give you 7 tips that I feel will help you become that better leader, secure the position you already have. I'm assuming at this point here, this is what you can do now to gain some influence on the people that you supervise so they want to work for you as opposed to having to work for you. But real quick, got to go over my sponsors. So the first sponsor I have is American Military University. If you guys are looking for a degree, seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They're a great online school. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections. They're also very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So again, if you want to bring experience into the classroom, check out American Military University. We also have my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, that's now available on the market. It's a great book for training, especially dealing with inmate interactions. So if you guys are interested in getting that book, it's doing very well. It sells a lot of copies a day. You know, it sells pretty much to it sells to any agency in corrections right now. I mean, I literally think that book is being used across the country when it comes to corrections. And I would actually even go international. So I'm pretty lucky and been blessed. The link to that book is in the description. We also have Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. Guys, this book is loaded with tons of tips, not just from myself, but from others in the profession. It's a good, thick-sized book. And again, if you're looking for some advice dealing with the day-to-day of corrections, this book will help you a long way. And again, it's not just for one department. It covers different departments on many different levels. And again, the link to that is in the description. We also have the Tier Talk mugs. The link to that is in the description. And on the back of the mug, I love this. On the back of the mug, it's time for our voices to be heard. That slogan has been with me for over a decade now, probably, since we started the show, because that's pretty much the reason why Tier Talk began. And then we have these posters. My lovely daughter posting them up. And it's basically 18 signs you're overly involved with an inmate. These posters are selling very well. If you're interested in getting them, there's an email. And they'll give you the advice on how to buy the posters. And the email is nassashs22@gmail.com. Okay, guys, so before I give you these 7 tips that will make you a better leader, I want to read something off to you from the book, The 360-Degree Leader, again, written by John Maxwell. Leadership is more than management. Leadership is people more than projects. So remember that, guys. People more than projects. If you want the permission for the people to lead, you have to think more of not just getting something done. It's more about how do I influence my people to get the work done. So yes, you want to be productive, but you still need the people's permission to lead. So again, how do you remain productive and build relationships with your people in order to be productive? Movement more than maintenance. Guys, in corrections, we need momentum. We need positive momentum. We don't need micromanagement, because at the end of the day, micromanagement stops momentum. Bad managers, in their effort to micromanage every little thing, they never give their people a chance to create good, positive momentum. Good leaders look to create momentum over problem solving, because they know if you create good momentum, it's going to solve problems. So again, momentum over maintenance. Art more than a science, guys. Dealing with people is an art. It's creative. There's no formula here. So again, remember, you're dealing with people. Leaders deal with people. So you have to be creative, because you're going to deal with situations every day that could be quite novel. Intuition more than formula. It's kind of a little bit what we touched in on, but it's kind of understanding your experiences and then how to build from those experiences. We're going to talk about that, because that's going to fall into one of the tips. Vision more than procedure. Guys, sometimes policies and procedures, especially if they're dated, can limit us. So sometimes it's good to have a great vision of where you want to be, and then use that to filter some of the decisions you have to make, because I've seen a lot of people trying to solve very unique situations with procedures that really no longer apply. And again, if you want to move as an agency, if you want to grow as an individual, you got to be careful of working in procedures that really no longer apply. And you're wasting so much energy in trying to get that procedure to fit this situation, when technically what you should be doing is systematically abandoning it, and trying something new, because at this point, this isn't working. And I guess sometimes people are just more, I don't know if they're more loyal to the procedure or if they're just more resistant to change. But either way, at the end of the day, guys, you got to know where you need to be. And then you got to be able to look at that and say, hey, this ain't getting us there at all. And we have to grow. Risk more than caution. Again, growth is really based on risk, calculated risk. You want to go out of your comfort zone because you want to expand your comfort zone. And for agencies that are overly cautious and don't have a trusted environment, which allows their people to make errors with good intent, we're talking about calculated errors, not negligence, then you're going to stop your agency from growing. You're going to stop your agency from evolving into the next step. So 100%, guys, risk more than caution. That helps us grow, but that's founded on trust. If you want your staff to make an effort to be innovative, then you have to have a trusting environment where they feel they can do that. Action more than reaction. Guys, we're going to get into that. That's actually in my first tip. Then we have relationship more than rules. I'm big on that. 100%. I love to build relationships and use those relationships to influence the people that I lead, because I want them to want to work for me. I don't want them to feel that they have to. So one of my key things is I kind of utilize expectations over rules. As we're building relationships, I tell them what I expect. They tell me what they expect of me. That's fair. Why not? And then also, if it gets to a point where I have to enforce the rules, I mean, to be honest with you, that's where I'm looking to hold somebody accountable. And now I'm pushing more of my position, because now we're looking at consequential actions. So again, I love that. Relationships more than rules. And the last one is who you are more than what you do. So kind of piggyback on what I just said now, you're not looking to lead by your position. Remember, we manage the people that do the job. We lead the people that do the job. And when you lead people, you have to deal with all of them and not just the best pieces of them. So, and that's where there's usually a bit of creativity, like we mentioned before. Okay, so first tip. So again, guys, this is for 7 tips that will make you a better leader. So the first thing was just a little bit from the book I wanted to read. But again, so these are the tips that are coming from the 360-degree leader. So leaders think long-term. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to give you a little general meaning behind this. Again, you're going to have to find the specifics and where it could be applied. But I'm going to give you a scenario too as well through my experience that I think will help you relate to this tip. And then you can figure out how you could apply it in your leadership. So leaders think long-term. So what are we thinking here, guys? So in corrections, right, you can't be solely reactive. We're not playing checkers in a world that is really about chess. A lot of things that we do in corrections goes beyond being reactive. I mean, we have to look to prevent. And that to me is where the longer term comes in, right? If you're just quickly looking to react, then we're just kind of letting the situation control us. So what we got to do is when we deal with a situation, yeah, we're going to have to react, of course. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't react. Of course we react, but we're always reacting in an effort to prevent. And sometimes in our efforts to react, we have to think longer term. So in the meantime, while we're reacting to solve a problem, management has to be aware, or higher level management has to be aware that, hey, we're solving this for today, but we got to make sure that we stop this from recurring. So having said that, let's give the officers or let's give the staff the resources they need. Let's equip them to deal with this reaction until we can go ahead and think of something more long-term. The last thing you want to do while you're thinking of something long-term is to not be able to help the people on the floor who have to deal with it in the immediate, because that's where it's the most rocky right now. So again, while you're developing the upstream measure, keep on giving the resources to your people so they can deal with the rocky road until we can develop a long-term measure. And again, you don't want to keep staff in limbo while you're thinking of something long-term. So do what you can to keep them going through this rocky time until we can come up with a real good solution to hope that it prevents what's happening. And usually when it comes to upstream, and I'll give you an example, the reason why it's longer term is because it's going to it's going to involve more effort and more and different perspectives from maybe multiple departments that's involved in solving the issue. Because again, you're looking to prevent. So I'll just give you an example from my experience. But we could have splashing that occurs, and our officers are doing their tours, doing their rounds, and all of a sudden, the inmates decide to keep splashing them. So now we could keep on reacting and just dealing with it on an individual basis, case by case. Once the officer gets splashed, we take the inmate out, go through the procedure, hold the inmate responsible by charging them. Hopefully the prosecutor picks it up, whatever, the whole routine. Or once the officer gets splashed the first time, all of us from different departments that could be involved in the effective prevention of this happening again. So in this case here, let's say custody, management, and as we develop solutions, we may have to bring in other departments like commissary, medical and mental health. We could start, while we're thinking of things longer term, again, we make sure our officers are taken care of, but we bring people to the table to discuss what's happening. So maybe in this case here, we can even get maintenance involved to make a more advanced food port, or order a more advanced food port, or get commissary involved to make sure we limit the inmates to items that are one use, so they can't put anything in a tube and splash it out. Maybe some better training where we could teach the officers, certain orders that they could provide the inmate before making themselves vulnerable to being splashed, like making sure the inmate is told to go to the back of the cell before the food ports are open. Again, it's a multi-perspective approach that is meant for long term. But in the meantime, why these issues are being discussed and we're trying to implement a solution, we still have to make sure that we take care of our people in the moment. We can't have them sit in limbo waiting for our result of the upstream measure. So again, we're going to be going through the rocky moment of just fueling the reaction, but in the process, we're coming up with a higher term solution. I think the bigger problem with a lot of agencies right now is that while they're thinking long term, they forget that we got people on the floor that are waiting for an answer, and they kind of basically just get stuck in this reactive mode with no resources to deal with it. So you want to put all your resources into the reaction until you can figure out something longer term. So again, guys, I think that is definitely something leaders do. They think longer term. They don't think just about today. They think about tomorrow. So for me, I look at that as from reaction to prevention and corrections. We're going to move from reactionary measures to preventive measures. But why we're looking to discover what the preventive measures are, because that's more upstream and may involve multiple departments. Let's take care of our people who are on the floor, who are dealing with it in the moment. Next thing we have is seeing things within the larger context. Guys, this is something that I think could be a flaw for a lot of people that are just very into themselves or into their departments. Corrections has a big picture, and that big picture involves the perspective of many different departments who are involved in their mission, but ultimately all of us together on our individual missions connect to the bigger vision. So there's a bridge in between each individual division, each individual mission. There's a bridge between each individual mission that connects us as a whole. And we have to be able to understand what that bridge is. How do we build that level of understanding? How do we, build partnership towards each other, some compatibility so we can move and grow together. With that said, sometimes we don't see in the larger context, which means that when we have an incident, the first thing we do is we look inwards and ask ourselves, well, how does that just affect us? That's the wrong way of thinking. The first thing you want to do basically is, how does that affect the people that you lead? But also on the bigger scale, how does this affect the department? Because as I said, as we start to move up and look longer term, yes, but look more within the context, you'll realize that we're all in this together. And when we come up with solutions, we have to make sure that we give everybody who's going to be involved in that solution a fair voice to say how that solution is going to affect them. I would say for me, this could deal with, let's say I have a medical department that I'm overseeing that has to figure out how to maneuver in a custody driven world, and they have a concern, and they bring the concern to the table, and then custody shifts the concern and makes it about them. And now the problem is, when the meeting comes to a halt, if a good leader just kind of listens to the one department and lets them sell their argument, and then the meeting concludes, we haven't done nothing for the department that had a original concern, which is medical. We kind of left medical out hanging. Medical came up with a concern, and let's say at this point, custody and management said, nope, we can't do it. But we still haven't solved what their concern is. We haven't done nothing that's pro-social. So what I began to do on meetings is, when I do have departments and they have concerns, I make sure that they are the stakeholder when we bring up that concern. So everybody knows at the end of the day, our solution has to help that department. The one thing we cannot do is to shift that concern and make it about us. Because once we have constant resistance, that department doesn't move, and they do need our help. So the last thing I want is for someone to say they need our help, and then we're just constantly resistant just to be resistant. Because then another thing about that is that department is going to lose faith in our effort. They're not going to believe in our no's, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to say no sometimes, but we should always make an effort to give a yes, because these are departments that need our help. So having said that, if a department has a problem, let's say medical, and these are the people they need help from, I'm going to ask the people who may tend to be resistant because they may totally focus on themselves. I'm going to tell them to shift their perspective. Don't think from a custody perspective. Think from a medical perspective. And what do you think we can do? Because at the end of the day, I don't want resistance. I want solutions. So I think when you have people that are constantly put in resistance because they can't think within the larger context, then you get them to start coming up with solutions for the other departments. But again, the reason why you want to think in the larger context is because you don't want a department who needs you, who's asking you for help, to be left in the wind. So again, always think in the larger context. Think of how your actions go outside of you. How does it affect the people outside of you? Or on the bigger picture, how does it affect the other departments? Or on the bigger picture, how does it affect the agency or the running of the facility? So again, leaders see within the larger context. And another thing, by the way, is good leaders can translate that larger context to build understanding. So eventually we can get really good decision makers who understand the bigger picture, because leaders see the scoreboard. I mean, they're privy to seeing things before everybody else, or a bigger picture. So having said that, they got to be able to translate that. So the people on the floor become decision makers that really are pro-social decision makers. And what I mean by pro-social is they're doing things that are not just for themselves. They're doing things that can help ultimately the house or the agency move forward. All right, let me get the next one. That's tip. No, now we're on tip 3. Leaders push boundaries. So this is more about risk than anything else. And again, risk could be subjective technically. But what we mean by pushing boundaries is that we extend our comfort zone in our effort to solve problems. And which, by the way, when you push boundaries and when you take calculated risk, because a lot of people will say, well, in corrections, you got to be careful when you push boundaries. Yeah, I get it. But there's a balance too, because you have to grow. And you're dealing with situations every day that are constantly evolving. And we have to kind of keep the pace. I mean, some cases we get ahead of it. Most of the time, we're kind of keeping the pace. The last thing we want to do is not grow, not be innovative, because risk really is sometimes really through the back end of innovation. People that are innovative, they take risk. They take risks because they have to make a decision. And sometimes the policies and procedures we have in play, more importantly, the procedures, they're dated. They're dated. And for those people that have been resistant, and now we're trying to apply old procedures to these new situations, the agency's failing. And then now as situations evolve, we stop moving and we put a whole lid on any effort to solve an issue. But again, as mentioned before, risk really are built on a trusting environment, which means that leaders have to motivate people to want to take calculated risk, to want to be innovative when it comes to solving a problem. And that kind of really, the way leaders can help frontline staff deal with that is by giving them an understanding of where we're trying to go as a vision and giving them that direction of where these choices have to be filtered down from. So again, good leadership can provide direction and trust, but also let staff know that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make calculated risk, because it's going to happen in this profession, guys. We're dealing with behavior. I want decision makers. I want people that are going to take the ball and make a decision, not freeze because they can't move outside the confines of a procedure. And sometimes the best way to do that is literally having management step up or leaders step up and saying, no, I'm not perfect. I need help. I make mistakes too. So again, you're showing some level of vulnerability to highlight some level of authenticity. I mean, the last thing you want is leadership that's alpha, because if you have alpha leadership, they're not going to allow your that environment, that culture is not going to allow for the people to take risks, because they're going to be more concerned of failing. And also, by the way, when you don't have trust, it could stop people from doing the right thing in the moment. I mean, how many times people make an error and they're so afraid of reporting the error because they're more concerned of the consequences. Again, they get into a selfish mode, but it makes sense because they're afraid of getting in trouble, because they think, well, oh my God, this consequence could be so severe. They're gonna have to do this, this, and this, and I'm gonna be out of a job for 5 days because I made this human error. So they start covering up their mistakes. So and for me, a big thing about this, if I could share a story, when it comes to leaders pushing boundaries. This really does come from motivating your people, giving them meaning behind their work, trusting them, and empowering them, which we're going to touch on in a little bit, because there's another section about empowering. But for me, I love, again, it's going to kind of touch into empowering, but I love delegating the what and then pushing down the how and letting the people discover what's the best way to solve a problem. So for me, I love, if there's an issue to solve or something that has to be pushed, from leadership down, I bring all the department heads up. We discuss what's happening and involve, the different departments that are a part of this. And then I look for them to think outside of the box. A couple of reasons. One is I want to be the most effective. So in doing this new, whatever it is that we have to do. So I talk to the departments and the experts in their different areas, and they'll give us what they feel are the ideas that are most effective for their department. And then we start to blend them in together. We start to see, okay, well, if that works best for a business office, hey, what about you, medical? What is something that may work with that? And then we try to come up with a solution that we feel is most effective. And that really does push the boundaries, because you're thinking of outside the box thinking. Because if you have people, when you're trying to implement something new, and then you have that one person at the table while you're trying to implement something new, keep on saying, well, policy says this, or procedure says this, procedure says this. It's like, hey, guys, stop. We may have to develop a new procedure. So we can't go back onto what's written, because that may not cover what this new situation is. And again, that kind of puts the lid on things. So again, when it comes to pushing boundaries, it's great to have, leadership that knows how to translate the vision and then motivate people through trust. Hey, it's okay. Let's just trial and error. Because here's the funny thing, guys, we do learn more from failures and successes. And sometimes people get stuck in policies of the past, thinking that they're continuing to be successful when they're not. And they wind up spending so much energy, as I mentioned before, just trying to get a policy or a procedure that no longer works. And instead of developing energy on something new, they waste all their energy on resources on shit that's just no longer working. So again, a good effort there is to, when it's time to shift, you shift. And you bring everybody involved. And then again, also, guys, when you have everybody at the table and they're involved and they're coming up with all these best solutions, it also gives an honest no if something can't be carried out. So now imagine if there isn't something that needs to be implemented from the higher ups, and you talk to your team, and all of a sudden you have all these perspectives in play, and we went outside the box and started thinking, and it just doesn't work. Imagine how you're able to formulate a response back to your level, the higher level, and say, hey, we couldn't do this, and these are the many angles we were willing to try. We even thought outside the box on these certain things, and just not going to happen. Because the last thing you want is for you to get so stuck in policy and procedure that when you do have a concern that probably could be addressed through common sense, but you're just not thinking outside the box, someone's going to come up and micromanage the shit out of that, and just say that, yo, you guys could simply just have did that, just have did this. And again, that could be our failure to think outside the box. So again, welcoming the different perspectives, even new perspectives, helps us exhaust all measures to make something more effective, or if we have to say a no, the trusted effort in saying the no. So that moves us to tip 4. Leaders push emphasis on the intangibles. Guys, when you're hiring for supervisors, you're going through an interview process or whatever it is, a lot of us may focus on the technicalities, the knowledge of the job, and this person was great because they really know the job, and, they know how to do these things. If you're looking for a sergeant or you're looking for a lieutenant, they've done a million cell extraction, whatever more of the aggressive things that people use to define what we do, as opposed to looking at some of the softer skills as well. But having said that, some of us focus so much on the technical, but there also should be an effort, and a real good effort, at how people manage the intangibles, because as you start to move up, you're going to start overseeing areas that you have no experience in. So what's going to help you from the beginning of your leadership journey is the influence you have with the people who do the job. And we're talking about intangibles. We're talking about personalities, emotions, morale, momentum, timing. I mean, just things that I don't know if you could quite measure. It's just feelings. And again, for me, this is really about motivating the people that do the job. And as a leader, this is a skill that you must have, especially the further up you go, because the further up you go, to be honest with you, it's less technical for you and more about managing the intangibles, managing the people that do the job. And I'll give you an example with that. As on the administrative side, I moved up and now I supervise areas I don't have experience in. And right off the bat, I knew I have to get these people to trust me. And when I was on the front line as a good sergeant, the officers build their trust based on your experience. This guy will be good to lead us during these heightened emergent times. Because that's the first thing custody sometimes looks at, is they look at emergency situations and can I trust this person to lead me through it? So the first thing they look at are the experiences of this individual. How could this person be a leader when they never did a cell extraction? Or how could this person be a leader when they never were involved in responding to a code or whatever it is? And I get it, because that's the frontline supervisor on the job. They are going to be leading actions during those emergency situations, but we got to make sure that we don't minimize the importance of really influencing the people to make decisions where it needs to be made, which is on the front line. Because in my mind here, I may not have those experiences, but I care and I value your experiences. I value your input. And basically, I'm willing to, if need be, to step aside and learn from you in my effort to grow so I could become better. And I think for me, that worked. I mean, when I didn't have experiences in something, I would let the people know that I cared about them and I was interested in them. I valued them. I found meaning in what they did, meaning in who they are. And this allowed me to grow. And this allowed me also to get a deeper level of care. Because think about this. If there's a technical side and you're smart, they may respect you in that position. But when you show them that you care and that you value them, they respect you as a person. And that may have more weight. So now you have being respected as a person until you can earn that level of experience through learning through your people, the people that you supervise. So again, managing the intangible is really about gaining influence and then dealing with the people that you supervise. So again, this is harder to do. It's longer term, but should never be overlooked. And again, if you guys are doing interview processes, I get it. You got to go over the technical because people do have to have some level of experience, but don't eliminate any questions that should be asked when it comes to dealing with people, solving conflict, helping people grow, whatever it is, something that can be asked that gives you an understanding of how creative this person is when it comes to dealing with the people that they need to influence to have them do whatever job it is they have to do. Because at the end, good leaders gain influence. All right, number 5. Leaders learn to rely on intuition. So for me, intuition, it really comes from one experience, so experience is like practice technically to some extent, but it's more of evaluated experience as well. Like, I've gone through something, but let me sit back and evaluate it, and let me really learn from it. Because technically, I want to be like automatic when I need to make a decision. So that really does require you going through these experiences, being insightful, learning from it, really evaluating it, to the point where if you have to make a decision on the fly, you can lean on that and react accordingly based on, what it is that you've been through. Intuition is really, it's a gut feeling. It's basically making a decision without the evidence to back it at that time. It's just trusting your gut. And some people tend to wait for the evidence, and sometimes you can't. There's just not enough time to, make a decision, and then before you act on it, look for support for that decision based on whatever evidence is there. Sometimes you just got to make the decision and let the shit fall where they may, because people are depending on you to make that decision. So I always tell people, when it comes to leadership, it's really not about how much time you have in before you move up. It's more about how willing you are to learn from the experiences you've been through. I mean, there are people that could have gone through, let's say, 50 million things and not learned anything. And there could be something there could be someone that gone through one thing and really just sat in the moment and just learned everything about that one incident. And just on that moment alone, have truly surpassed most people who just passively just go through the experiences without making an effort to learn and grow. So relying on your intuition is actually one of the best gifts that we have as correctional staff. So you have to learn to rely on your intuition, because the decisions you're going to make that have to be done on the fly, your body or your body is probably going to tell you first, this is what you got to do, move forward, before you have any evidence to support that. So really relying on your intuition is relying on yourself, having trust in yourself based on what you've been through. And I think the best way to do that is to really evaluate your experiences, because in the process of learning, you're also building trust in yourself. So when your body says you're going to do something, you go with it and you explain it later. I mean, that's kind of what intuition is. 2 more. Leaders invest power in others. This is powerful because this is about empowerment. I said before that you kind of delegate the what, but you want to push down the how. You want people to discover how the stuff is done. Leadership is not about control. It's actually about release, if you think about it. I mean, you're looking about empowering other people so that they could be more effective, so you can accomplish more things. Because guys, again, as you move up, you can't handle everything. You have to be able to trust in the system. And it's crazy because a lot of people that micromanage, they look for perfection. But I think what you should be looking to do is it's not so much how someone would do the job just like you, but are they 80% effective at doing that job? Yes, then let them go. Let them go and they'll grow into the other 20%. I mean, some of us, when we've been doing a job for so long, we move up to a supervisory position, we look for that level of perfection. People and get coach people and try to get them to reach some level, but you can't do it to a point where you're making them hesitant. You're helping them grow. But the last thing you want to do is micromanage them to the point where, 1, they become reliant on you, or 2, they're just afraid to take a move. So again, it's about appreciating them from where they're at in the moment, and then helping them. If you want to guide them, that's fine. Of course you can guide them, you can mentor them, but just, there's a boundary there too. Don't do to the point where you're so overwhelming that they lose out on their ability to feel empowered and make decisions, because, well, you're just going to tell me A, B, C, D, E, and F, so I'll just wait at each step. So, and I've dealt with that. I've supervised people who don't even realize they become so reliant. You give them something that requires them to go from A to Z, and they're going to ask every letter along the way. Well, how do I get to B? How do I get to C? How do I get to D? And it's like, wow. And then you work at other facilities where they have a culture that's empowering, and you tell them A, and they'll circle the alphabet four times. They'll get the job done because they work in a culture where they're empowered. And again, micromanagement stops momentum. So if you want to empower others so they can build momentum, and that momentum will solve problems. But if you get those people that look to be leaders, that look to just jump in on any time that there's a problem, it stops momentum. And then basically we don't move. We stop at everything instead of creating momentum to keep moving forward. So again, leaders invest power in others. So look to empower your people to solve problems. So if someone has a concern, they bring to as management. I hear the concern. What would you do to solve it? Listen to them, and then try to see if you could work with them to help them solve the problem in a way that they feel is something that they figured out, that they're empowered to do. So again, you want to delegate power. You want to delegate authority, not just delegate a task, but you want to delegate someone the authority to do the task. And they can come up to see how things are going, but most of the time it's basically, if you need my help, I'm here. If not, just let me know when it's done. So this is all I need. Let me know when it's done. And trust comes from that. That's how you start building trust. Last thing we got is leaders see themselves as agents of change. But I want people to know, even leaders sometimes don't like change because it does involve something new, something novel. But leaders know change has to happen. I like to use the word evolve because evolve to me is growth from the bottom up. Change to me kind of looks like it's being pressured down. But having said that, just to kind of keep things simplistic, a lot of people sometimes don't want change because it's new and it could be slightly uncomfortable. But we have to change. And it's a leader's job to motivate people and to inspire people to want to change, especially if it's beneficial for where we need to be, if it's beneficial for us to be productive. And again, in order for us to be productive, we have to be able to go down where the people are and then bring them with us. We're not here to impress them by being a leader from a distance. We're here to make an impact and they're to walk with us. There's no king of the hill here. We're looking not to be at the top of the mountaintop alone, but rather bring people with us. And sometimes that's slower because not everybody walks at the same pace. But having said that, that's our job. Our job is to understand what the change is and then help guide people to the change by helping them feel invested. Again, if you have a change in vision, we want people to be invested in that because we want them to make that vision feel like it's their own, the founder's mentality. And we want to help them understand the needs for the change, the why behind the change. And then we do this together. It's a shared partnership. And then eventually we all share in the successes. And if there's a failure at any level, we all hold some level of responsibility. And then we put all our energy towards making it better. So leaders see themselves as agents of change, but they also have to make sure they're able to influence that to their people, to make sure that they want to change and that we're not just dragging them forward. It's not about pushing people. It's about pulling people. Come on, let's do this together. Let's do this together. As always, guys, the show is tiered off. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.